8 to 12% of monthly rent. If you're just looking for a basic, albeit vague number, that's the typical average rate that you can expect to pay for a property manager. But as with any investment, understanding the value that's behind something is really what allows you to make investment decisions that you can be comfortable with. That's why the 8 to 12% is really just a starting point, and why in this video, we're going to help you actually break down the costs of hiring a property manager. By the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of what you're actually paying for. Hi everyone, this is Brandon with Coastline Equity, a property management company based out here in Southern California. And today we're going to be looking at the factors that influence property management costs, as well as the various fees that a property management company might charge. So let's jump right into it. Now, there are 5 main factors that will influence the cost of your property management: the size of the property, the type of property, its condition, its location, and the extent of the services performed. Size of rental property. This one should be pretty obvious, but generally speaking, managing a larger rental property involves more work than managing a smaller one, and so the fees that will be charged will likely be larger too. This is particularly true for residential buildings, where a larger footprint typically means more doors and more tenants. Of course, from a property management perspective, this does lend itself to more ideal economies of scale, wherein their work is more concentrated in one location rather than spread out all across town. So in return for that, while you may be paying a higher amount overall, you can expect to pay a lower percentage of the total rent collected. For example, you'd pay closer to 8% than 12% for a larger building. Type of property. Many property management companies are capable of managing a variety of property types, including single-family homes, apartment buildings, retail centers, and office buildings, while others specialize in just one or two of these. Now, while it may be tempting to think of all property types in the same vein, they really can have some very unique elements to them, and that can affect what you should be willing to pay for your property manager. For instance, you may find a company that has a great reputation for managing single-family homes in a particular city, and although they can probably handle it, they might not be the best choice if your family owns a small shopping center or two. A management company might charge more because they have a long track record of managing different types of properties and can accommodate just about anything that you bring to them, or they might ask for a higher amount for a specific type of property, such as retail centers, because they have decades of experience in maximizing those particular investments. The details are very specific to each individual company, but these are all things to consider when looking for your next manager. Condition of property. In general, the newer a building is, the fewer maintenance calls it's going to need, and the fewer major repair or renovation projects it's going to have. Because of this, you may be able to ask for a lower rate if that's the case with your investment property. On the other hand, you might be charged more if your property is much older and both you and your property manager foresee a number of major renovations that will need to take place in the near future. Location of rental property. As with all things related to real estate, some areas simply command higher rents and standards of living, and as such, prices of goods and services, such as management services, in those areas will be higher as well. Conversely, management fees in the regions that command lower rents will typically be lower too. Extent of services. The last major factor that influences the price of property management is the particular set of services that the property management company will provide. For example, some landlords really love to be hands-on and ask to be called first when any basic repairs are needed. They don't, however, want everyone at the building to know that it's actually the owner that's out there fixing the sprinkler system, and so they simply rely on a property manager to communicate with the tenants and collect all the rent. In this case, you will likely pay much less than someone that wants to be completely hands-off and needs a manager to not only collect rent, but to fill vacancies, handle repair, coordinate renovations, proceed with evictions, and handle all of the accounting. Breakdown of property management fees. Now that we've gone over the main factors that influence the price of management, let's take a closer look at some of these specific fees, both one-time and ongoing, that you might expect to pay. Initial setup fee. Onboarding a new client can take a lot of time, energy, and organization. The management company may need to send staff out to the location to inspect the condition of your property and introduce themselves to the tenants. The accounting team will collect, organize, and store any important documents such as deeds, financial reports, mortgage information, and tax documents. And the office staff will need to begin the process of changing over all the mailing addresses for any invoices and correspondence with each of the existing utility companies, vendors, and tenants. It's a lot of work up front and requires a lot of time from the management office. Monthly management fee. Okay, now we get to the cost that is probably at the forefront of your mind and the one that people are often referring to when they mention that 8 to 12% average. It's the ongoing fee that a manager will charge you for their continued services. The contract that you sign with them will specify how exactly this fee is calculated and what services the fee includes. Some companies charge a higher monthly management fee, but it may be more inclusive of different services. So don't necessarily be put off by a higher initial fee until you understand what's included. Now, you'll usually see these monthly fees in one of two different ways: a flat fee or a percentage of rent. A flat fee is a specific and set dollar amount you pay the management company each and every month. The exact number is determined based on the factors that we discussed earlier, and you may be more likely to see a flat fee when dealing with something small, like a single-family home. More commonly, a property management company will collect their fee based on the percentage of the monthly rent that was collected at the building. This usually works well for all parties involved because the management company gets paid more, but only if they can maximize the amount of rent that was collected each month. Just be sure that you are aware of the difference between rent due versus rent collected. If you're being charged based on rent due, it means that the fee percentage that you're charged is based on the total amount of rent that should be collected that month. Rent collected, on the other hand, means that the fee is based on the dollar amount that actually was collected or received during the month. In other words, the amount that you pay your property manager will be lower if one or more tenants have not paid their rent in full. That works out better for you and incentivizes your management company to stay on top of timely rent payments. One more thing about monthly fees. A lower fee does not always mean a better deal. A lot can be said about the reputation and track record of the management company that you're working with. If one company is vastly cheaper than another, that company will usually try to make up for their lower fees with a higher quantity of clients and properties, potentially spreading their energy and focus away from your property. Lastly, just to be thorough, let's quickly go over some miscellaneous fees that you might expect to see. Tenant Placement Fee. A property manager may charge a separate fee for placing tenants in your property. This is because marketing, showing your vacancy to prospective tenants, and, as often is the case with commercial buildings, negotiating leases is a distinct and separate workload compared to simply maintaining the building and collecting all the rent. Again, this could be a flat fee or a fee based on the percentage of rent collected. Half a month's rent to a full month's rent is common. Vacancy fee. Next is something that we here at Coastline Equity never charge for, but it's worth mentioning in case you come across it elsewhere. In cases where the landlord wants to fill vacancies themselves or hire a third-party vendor to do it for them, a vacancy fee may be charged if units are left empty. This is because, as mentioned earlier, management companies usually make less money if units are unoccupied, and less money is therefore collected in rent. Again, we never use this at Coastline because our goal is to align our interest with our clients as much as possible, and we think that this detracts from that. Maintenance fees. Maintenance fees are generally included as part of the monthly management fee, but you may see that amount in its own separate category in order to distinguish it from what's charged for all the operations that take place in the management office. This amount is used specifically to staff maintenance people to upkeep common areas, respond to basic maintenance calls, and perform general fixes around the property. If a specific repair must be made, the cost of the repair will be deducted from the reserve repair fund, which is what we'll go over next. This is a separate account that the landlord puts money into for necessary repairs at the property. It ensures that there is always some cash available on hand to handle those repairs in a timely manner. Some landlords want to be notified prior to any work being done for any particular task, while others put their trust in the management company to handle repairs as needed, so long as the cost of work is below a certain threshold. Eviction fees. Because evictions can be a lengthy legal process, if you want a property manager to handle tenant evictions, you will often have to pay for it. Expect to pay a few $100s for each eviction, plus any associated court costs. Some property management companies will recommend a qualified attorney instead. Early termination fees. Lastly, we have the early termination fee. If you enter into a contract with a property management company and then end that agreement before it expires, you will often have to pay an early termination fee. This amount will vary based on the terms of the contract. Here at Coastline Equity, we don't have a termination fee. Instead, we are committed to what we call an easy exit pledge. This simply means that if you're not happy with our team's service, you can cancel your contract at any time. Well, we've covered a lot of information and hopefully gave you some good insight into what you can expect with regard to the costs of hiring a property management company. Though it can seem a bit overwhelming, remember that the main benefit of working with a management company in the first place is that it allows you to be less of a day-to-day operator and more of an investor. If you haven't seen it already, check out our video here that goes into detail about what a property management company actually does and whether it's a good investment for you. And with that, from Coastline Equity, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.